Hello, everyone. Welcome to another PM Learning series today. My name is Shavi. I'm the host for this show, and thank you so much for joining us. Happy New Year. This is the first episode to kick off 2023. Last year, we have the pressure of doing 23 of this episode and impacting over 50,000 viewers globally. So really excited to see what's in stock for 2023. And welcome and to come back and looking forward to have our conversation today and kicking off the new year with many of you. So as some of you might know, the Product Management Learning Series is a series of live streaming events where industry thought leaders and product practitioners share their PM career journey and lessons learned along the way to inspire current and aspiring PM to level up your product career. And thank you so much of seeing a lot of fans. Oh, fan Jerry. Thanks for showing up and supporting another show. And so for those of you who are new to the series, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter in the event description to receive a recap of key takeaways from this event, as well as future event updates. There's also a special alerts for those of you who are job searching in this January. We know that it's a tough macro environment. So I am partnering with Phil Terry, who's a very well-known product leader, have wrote a book, Never Search Alone, over 400 different drafts in order to help job seekers to find a better job this year. So we're kicking off a special 4-part product job search series. The first one will start in about 2 weeks with Marty Kagan. For those of you who don't know Marty Kagan, you should check him out because he's sort of the godfather of product management, if you think about it. So really exciting. Make sure you check out that series. I'm going to post the link right now. And then I'll introduce our guest for today. But we have a little bit of delay in commenting. All right. So for folks who are joining us today, please introduce yourself in the chat, where you're joining us from and what you're hoping to learn from our very special guest, Nikita Miller today. Nikita, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor to have you with us. We met maybe 6 months ago through another guest from the show. So it's been a really honor to get to know you and your work. I know we have to reschedule our chat a couple of times, but I'm really, really excited. I think you have so many gems that you can share with our audience.
Same here. Thanks. And this actually turns out to be perfect timing. So happy to be here.
That's awesome. Great. So just a quick intro. Nikita is the Vice President, Head of Product Management at the Knot Worldwide. In this role, Nikita leads the global product management team focused on product strategy and growth across all brands. Nikita has spent her career in product management, building great teams and products that customers love. Most recently, before this role, Nikita was the VP of Product at Dooley. And she has formerly also led product teams at Trello, Atlassian, as well as spending her product experience across startups, early stage startups to multinational companies, from EdTech to Enterprise SaaS. I'm really excited today, Nikita, to dig into some of that and how you make decisions, joining different companies at different stages, and how, folks can learn from you to think building their own career decision-making framework to accelerate their career growth. You are also an active startup advisor, angel investor, and board member. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Shivi.
We have a lot to learn from you.
All right.
Now, for folks who are joining us, please introduce yourself. Again, drop in the question, any question you have for Nikita in the chat, and we'll pick them out from time to time. I see there's some folks joining from Austin, folks from Italy, Uganda, and Bahamas, Mexico, Canada, Nigeria, Ethiopia.
So exciting.
Wow, this is a very international Romania.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's a new year, so excited to see many of us back and new users. I wasn't able to post the link earlier, so I'm going to try one more time and see if I'm able to get the link. I know that a lot of people are job searching, so I do wanted to spread the word to make sure that we help as many people as possible.
Okay.
All right, so let me just do that real quick. Awesome. All right. Yeah. So for folks who wanted to learn more about Job Search Series specifically, this is the short link that you can write down and learn more about the series. Now, without further ado,
All right.
drum roll.
Let's jump in.
A little bit about your career journey and your path to product. We know that you work different type of company, but if you can just give us a little bit of a storytelling of your journey.
So let's start with where I am right now. I'm at head of product at the Not Worldwide. You mentioned job searching. Go and visit the Not Worldwide. We are one of the companies that are still recruiting for product people and folks across all of product development. So check us out. It's a great place to be, great culture. I'll talk about that later. The reason I mention it is because in a lot of ways it fulfills many of the things I was looking for at this point in my career in terms of opportunities and growth and culture, flexibility, and all the things that I think might be more important to me now than were earlier in my career. I started off my career in undergrad, for instance, school in investment banking. And finance more broadly. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, realized very quickly that maybe that wasn't the path for me for all sorts of reasons. I wasn't passionate about it, that interested, maybe not that good at it, although I tried. And so when I was leaving school, it was really challenging for me to figure out what I wanted to do. So I ended up getting a job at a small company out of Stamford, Connecticut, a little ways from home. And while I was there, they acquired a small startup in the language learning space. And that's how I got introduced to product development. At the time, I didn't even know what product management was or that it could be a career, as many of us know now. It's very different now, almost 15 years later, where you can go to school for product management, where there's series like this. 15 years ago, there wasn't really that much of it. But I got there, kind of got into this notion of like technology and what it meant and the power of it and what it was to kind of work with teams with just different disciplines, and thought it was really fascinating. Not long after that first gig, I had the opportunity to either go to law school, and I chose not to go to law school, or move abroad to work in Shanghai or Sao Paulo in a product role. And I chose to go to Shanghai. Happy to talk about that decision as well. It was many things. I was very young, very eager. I thought it would be an adventure. And at that point, I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do. So I thought it would be a nice way to find out and have an adventure. Spent a couple of years in Shanghai, moved to London, still in product management. At that time, I was focused very much on education technology. For me, education in general has always been near and dear to my heart, and I wasn't sure how I would use my career to contribute. So I thought EdTech seemed to be a good combination of education, technology, business. Got a little bit jaded by that. I think any of you that have worked in EdTech or kind of know that space, it's a challenging space to be when you think about student outcomes and technology and business, especially in venture funded tech companies. So did that for a little while. And then after Shanghai, I wanted to move closer to home. It was a little bit far, back to New York, and an opportunity came up in London to go help build out a product team there. And so I thought I could go home, where I still don't quite know what I'm going to do, or I can take this opportunity to see what it's like to grow and recruit a team. So that's what I did. Eventually made my way back to New York. And when I got back, I really had to make a call about whether or not I was going to stay in ed tech or try something else in tech. I decided to stay in ed tech, but maybe focus a little bit more on a smaller company. And I also at that time had not had as much experience back then in building mobile products as I wanted. So I thought that would be another good opportunity. So I indexed a lot for kind of the things that I wanted to learn at that particular time. After a few years, ended up at Trello. Really awesome experience. Spent about 5 years at Trello, initially leading their enterprise business and then leading the product team there. We're acquired by Atlassian. Great companies all around, lots of learning there. And then after about 5 years, it was time for me to move on and figure out what I was going to do next. So after a series of many conversations, many interviews, lots of soul searching, landed on where I am now. So that's it in brief. Happy to talk about any of those things specifically.
Yes, thank you so much for an overview of your career. I think it's so fascinating because there are so many things we can dig in. So first, you talk about you started your, pivoted into product and investment banking into a very small stage, company. And
Yeah.
then eventually you work on like more ad tech company, and then to like more hyper growth startup to more mature company. And you kind of going
Yeah.
different stages, right? Trying it, sampling it all.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of your sort of, how do you compare PMing at various stage of companies, and how would you help people decide? Like, what was your
Yeah.
decision-making process of like, here am I this stage of my career, I'm going to join this type of company doing this type of work.
Yeah.
Like, what was it like? What was the sort of your mental model around choosing
Yeah.
companies of at various stage?
That's a great question. So folks that know me well, I tend to be a pretty goal-oriented person, and I try to be a planner on most things. Early in my career, before I even moved to Shanghai, the person, Bill Fisher, that ended up kind of giving me that opportunity in Shanghai, we're talking about what I was going to do next. And I think the law school route seemed very straightforward to me. I knew what steps I had to take to get there, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And so I was in this moment of trying to make this decision about, what am I optimizing for? And in that moment, I got really great advice from him at the time. Just, you can have a sketch for what you want to do, but it's very challenging for you to plan each step along the way. But there is something about at least envisioning, right, what it is that you want, so that when certain opportunities come up, you have a better idea of which direction you might lean in. So for me, it's always, I always ask myself at a given moment, like, what am I optimizing for? When I was very earlier in my career, the way I answered that question was really around learning and experiences. So what are the experiences that I think I might need to hopefully get me to a place where I'm an expert in a particular area, or, have the experience of having worked abroad or having worked with a specific technology. So this question of what am I optimizing for a specific time is something that I'm always asking myself. And it, of course it varies. There are uncertainties in everything, but that's always been helpful to me. In terms of figuring out early stage, later stage, mid stage, more stable, more mature, I think for product managers, when you're first starting out, I'd venture to say that any role in product management is going to be a good learning experience. Even if it's not the best company, whether it's big or small, right? You're going to learn a lot. And so, you should probably be choosing more around, is it interesting to you? Are these the people you want to spend time with than anything else? Because early on, you're going to learn no matter what. For me, working at a smaller company early on, I thought was really beneficial because I had to do a little bit of everything along the way, right? So, customer experience at a small company, when you're a product manager, you're also doing some marketing, you're doing some sales, you're doing customer success, you're obviously doing research. There are all these different disciplines that you might not be the best at, but you probably have to contribute to in some way. And that's just an awesome learning experience. At larger companies, you might get more disciplined, I think, training. Like, so one of the things about an early stage company is you get to do all of it and you're learning, but you probably don't have someone that has the time or capacity to guide you in a way that lets you know whether or not you're doing things the right way. It's a lot of trial and error, which is fun for certain people. At the bigger stage companies that are more mature, more developed, kind of where I am now, product management is a discipline, right? And you have people that can guide you. You have a rubric, you have more guidance on, how to do research, how to do customer interviews, how to write specs. And that at a larger company, depending on kind of what you're looking for, but also maybe your personality might be a better fit for you. So this question of optimizing for an experience, I think, is really important. I was chatting with someone about this recently, and I think saying that now seems obvious, but I forget that at the time, early in my career, I was also optimizing for paying off student loans, which many of you might know something about. So finding that what are the experience that also, obviously have a certain lifestyle that can help you sustain yourself is really important. And sometimes that trade-off is really hard. I took jobs early on that probably paid less, but had a huge upside in terms of the experience I was going to get and what I was going to learn and what I might be able to use or do with it later on. And that's also a good way to think about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I love like what you're thinking, asking yourself, what am I optimizing for it
Yeah.
any single stage of your career. That's almost like in product, like what is the true north that you're trying to, chase. And I like the sort of discipline versus jack of all trades, depending on what you're optimizing for in your career stage. I think that's something to think about. One thing I wanted to double down on is one of our members, Jacqueline, is asking this question that how do you decide whether you want to be a specialist PM? Right now we see a lot of discipline like, growth PM, for example, or specialized in a particular industry versus being a generalist PM. I think you have quite a big, broad experience, across EdTech, Enterprise SaaS, right now a little bit of consumer. How would you think about, like, what's your framework of thinking about specialization versus generalization?
Yeah, I'm going to give a standard PM answer, which is it depends, right? It depends on so many factors. For me personally, I took the approach of wanting to get experience across a broad spectrum of things so that then I can figure out, where I wanted to spend more of my time. I ended up landing on, I'm not a technical PM. I think I lean more towards being on the user experience, right? User empathy side of product management. There's so many different things. And the thing I discovered about myself working on the teams I did was that I really love teams. I love the process of creating high functioning teams. I love focusing. I love understanding our users, figuring out what we need to do, and then like getting it done. And bringing those people and elements together is kind of where I think I would spike as a product manager. But some folks are different. Like I have a lot of friends who transition from being technologists to PMs. And a lot of what drives them and their inspiration is really about the technology and going deep on how do you understand or identify user problems. And really the technology part is what drives them. So I think it really is a personal decision about what part of being a product management gives you the most joy or energy. And that really varies. And you can tell that if you look at the life cycle of some project or some product you've worked on recently, go through the entire life cycle of getting something to market and think about where in that process you found was the most exciting for you. Like what part of that problem solving did you find most intellectually stimulating and also resonant, I guess, with how you work. So it really varies. It also varies if you intend or want to be an individual contributor, right? Or a manager or general manager, and how you approach what you learn across that might be very different. I hope that's helpful, Bryn.
Yeah, I love the answer is very much focused on you. If I hear, the key word for me is like understanding what fits you, what you're trying to learn, what you enjoy the most, what type of problem you're hoping to solve. And then really, have experience across different areas to kind of get that self-reflection. So
also,
I think
I'm sorry, just add to that, Shivi, and that might change over time, right? For a while, education technology was it for me. And then I thought, actually, no, I need a different industry. There are other things I'd like to learn. And then I transitioned. So give yourself room to do that as well.
Yeah, I love that check-in with yourself so that you can continually update reflect on what is the latest information. What do I learn? What do I like? I really like that. I think your story, your journey really resonated with our LinkedIn member, Karen. She can relate to your journey. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you mentioned that you had opportunity to work in Shanghai and London pretty early in your career. What would you say are some of the most important learnings having, the exposure to work in an international assignment? Do you recommend everybody to do it?
Yes.
Again, what was your process of deciding whether to work abroad?
I'm sorry, the sun is coming in and I don't have blinds, so there's a glare, forgive me. I actually I love talking about my experience in Shanghai. It was, I think for me, one of the most formative experiences professionally that I've had, and also personally. I think I went there, I did not know very much about, what I wanted to do, my career path. It was a new country. There were a lot of hurdles and kind of integrating and figuring out how to work there. I think that For me, the experience was amazing because it forced me to step out of my comfort zone. It forced me to ask lots of questions. And it was also a humbling experience because there were so many unknowns. And I think that process of having to find those answers and find ways to connect with people and teams in that process was a really amazing way to start my product journey, because I had to do a lot of the things that you do in product management, right? And the other part about that experience was I was working in Shanghai, but I was also leading products internationally, right? So building products for Asia, Latin America, Europe. And so a lot of the work that I did was really distributed. And this was at a time when remote work, distributed work just wasn't as common as it is now. And so I learned a lot about how to tailor how a team operates, given the personalities on the team, given the cultures of the team, the expectations. And I think that's learning that everyone could benefit from. And now more than ever, right? We are global, and the products that we build are very rarely for a specific niche audience anywhere. And so getting that understanding about people and how we work and how how people have different diversities, ethnicities, cultures, languages, all those things. There's a lot of complexity there. But the beauty of it is if you get those things right, then you really end up with something remarkable, because all of those inputs always lead to a better product. So those years were really formative for me. It was also the time when I'd say it was the beginning of my understanding that product management is a discipline. And for those that are newer, this was when we were writing 25-page specs, right, to get things done. Very different now, but also, there was a rigor to it that I really appreciated. So yes, I would recommend anyone do it. And the experience of being in Shanghai, New York, and then London, very different. But the process of building a product that's focused on user needs, right, solving user problems and outcomes is the same, no matter where you are.
Yeah, what I liked about that part of your experience, two things. One, you mentioned about stepping out of your comfort zone, because it being in a foreign environment kind of pushed you to do that. But I think as a result of that, the second thing I love is that heightened awareness of everything, right?
Yes.
Of the user's need, the empathy, how team operates, the culture, the nuances, and a lot of different, the way how teams work. I think it's a great way to almost like elevate you being a PM.
Yes.
You already have to do those things, but being in a
Yeah.
foreign environment just make it like 120%.
That's right.
So love that experience. Also, I think Jacqueline responded that your response to his question about generalist versus specialist have been really, really helpful to digging in deeper and do that self-reflection. Jennifer have been loving and relating to your advice of centering on you, doing that self-reflection. And then Chan's mentioning about can express enough impact of international experience that sort of having a different cultural understanding can help you become a stronger PM. I wanted to spend sort of the remainder of this talk talking about how you look for new opportunities and some of the strategies that you use. So the first thing I like to learn from you is that, when we are looking for jobs, it's very much you're in this two-sided marketplace, right? Where sometimes you feel like you're interviewing and you're kind of like, victim is the wrong word, but you're on like the end where you try to get that job. But on the other hand, you wanted to advocate yourself, right, to get to the right level, the right opportunity, get the right level of support before you join so that you set yourself up for success. What would you say were some of the tips that you have for kind of advocating for yourself during the job search process? There's one question slightly, related from Susanna about what would you say the $1 million question that you will ask during the interview to kind of really understand, is this company the right fit for me?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I keep shifting around. The sun is beautifully aggressive right now. I'm trying to get out of it. That's a really thoughtful question. In the past few years, I've interviewed at a bunch of companies. And this question of what you're looking for, so someone mentioned this idea of centering on the you, ultimately it is your career, right? Recently, I was sharing with a mentee of mine something that my mentor shared with me, which was, when you're a product manager and operator, as you all are, you get to make one investment for the most part of your time. Like we all have side hustles and that's great, but for the most part, you make one investment. Unlike if you're a venture capitalist, you're investing in many startups, right? Many companies in a given year. And so you really want to make sure that you are aligning yourself and what you need with the right company. And that's in terms of culture, but also what the company needs, right? So, as I'm now in my career, I have a better sense, I think, of the things that I'm great at and the things that I enjoy and the kind of work that I want to do. And so if I'm interviewing at a company and I don't see that those things are present, like if they don't actually need the skills that I'm bringing, then it's probably not a good fit, even if the people are really nice, even if the offer package is really great, right? Because it's both what do you need and then doing an assessment of the company. Like, what do you know of what the company needs to succeed? And do those things intersect in a way that you think you want to commit your time and energy to for however long? So I think that's one way. I try to ask very tangible questions, like the $1 million question. I don't have one. I tend to really want to know about the product, like how's it doing, right? So one good signal is if you want to know, like, what does growth look like, right? And you probably want real numbers. And most companies, by the time you get down that path, they can share that because you want to get on board with that as well. You want to know, what are the numbers? What is the data telling you? What have you learned? What does opportunities for growth look like? That whole line of questioning. The other is really around, are these the problems that you are interested in solving? And I joined a company and I only stayed there for a few months. Great people, nice team. But I realized early on that actually the product itself were not the problems that I wanted to solve, right? And I think for a product manager, don't underestimate how important that is. Because if you don't want to solve these user problems, your day-to-day is going to be really, really challenging. So I'd say that's one of the $1 million questions, Susanna, is really ask, like, what are the user problems that you're trying to solve right now? And how have you validated them? And what are the business problems that you're trying to solve? Because as a product person, you need to solve both the user problem and the business problem, right? And it could be that the company knows exactly what those things are, and it could be that they don't, and that's part of why they would be hiring you, for instance. But yeah, that's generally how I think about it. Another experience that I've had, I think I've been very lucky to work at companies that had really smart and really generally very kind people. Not everyone has this experience, but I can name a handful of people from every company I've worked at that I'm still in touch with and really enjoyed being around and spending time with. And that's really important, right? So I had that at Trello. Trello, I think, was an amazing place. Most of us are still in touch. And so finding something after that was really important, right? This idea that you're going to spend, for me, I have 2 tiny humans. I have a 5-year-old and a now 3-year-old. And so if I'm going to trade off, like part of the trade-off is who I'm spending my time with. And so you really want to make sure that it's a place where you feel good committing your time and your energy because it's limited. I feel like I'm getting very deep in this New Year's reflection.
No, that's great. That's great. That's one thing actually I want to double down on. But first of all, Susanna says thank you for your advice. And an earlier, LinkedIn user also loves how you're thinking about, exploring your journey and then potentially investing in, high growth areas in the early, stage of your career and then accelerate your growth later. I do wanted to double down actually on one aspect. And then there's one more question about earliest stage PM that some folks ask. You mentioned a lot, and the focus, if I have one key takeaway from today's discussion, is like knowing what you want and constantly reflecting on that. Right. My question is that sometimes you are very clear knowing your preference, but sometimes maybe you have conflicted feeling or you're unclear on what you want. Do you look out for mentors? Like, how do you get more clarity on like, okay, these are the things I'm looking for, or this is what my gut tells me. And then you also need to do that reality check of like, what the market will give you given your level of experience, even though you want those things, right? So how do you reconcile that? What's your framework there?
That's hard. I think we're all product managers, or most of us are product managers, and we have that in our day-to-day, right? You make lots of decisions with imperfect information, right? And so one of the models that we use is like, is this a one-way door or a two-way door, right? I think Amazon, that was their model. And if it's a two-way door, which many things are, including decisions you make in your career, like if you start a company, it's not the right fit, that's a two-way door, right? You still have those choices. So that's one. Try not to stress too much about the two-way door decisions. I do have a group of mentors. I think I have some group of mentors or sounding board for everything, a small handful, and I rely on them a lot. And I think for me, it's not just career professional mentors, right? I think a lot of the soul searching, someone used that word, that I need to do is beyond professional, right? It's how am I balancing all these aspects of my life as a mother, a wife, a friend, a product leader, a runner, an artist, like all these things. There are trade-offs that come with everything. And so I do spend a lot of time being a sounding board, or having a sounding board for the decisions that I make. Professionally, I think that there are two ways to think about this. As I was contemplating this talk and some of this question, I was thinking, well, what does it mean for the teams that you're a part of right now? And the one thing I would say is you need to be a good teammate. Like, that's the baseline. Be a good teammate. Be a good collaborator, and be the person that someone can reach out to if they need a hand. And that's a really important thing. And the reason is because the folks that you're working with right now, they will go on to work at 10, 20 other companies, right? Collectively. And that means that if you leave an impression as being a good teammate, right, you have access to all of these different companies that you might not otherwise have known. And I think that, to me, is kind of the key. When I say that I have a handful of people from all the companies that I've worked at, I do. And it's not just your manager or the executives. It tends to actually be your peers. Like, that's one takeaway that I want everyone to hear, that it's not about necessarily managing up, as people say. It's about the people around you that you're collaborating with. Those are the people that you'll likely have the longest relationships with, and will be the ones that can help you navigate a lot of these issues. And so I have that. I have my peers. I have folks that have gone through this long before me and can give me advice, right? I have my family and my core group of friends who have known me longer, right? And so have better context for what my dreams and aspirations are. And being able to kind of pull information from these different sources and people is really valuable. But ultimately, it does go back to like sitting with yourself and reflecting about what you want and what you want to learn.
This is awesome. I think it really does resonate with a lot of the LinkedIn members. One of them is deciding between two offers, and your decision framework help him or her clarify and solidify, what's the right choice.
Awesome.
So that's awesome. Real outcome right there. And then Varsha is loving the concept of having a group, this sounding board concept, right, to help you balance your idea. And what I also love about your emphasis on, like, hey, it's not just like the managing up the top people, but your peers can equally help you navigate certain scenario and offer emotional support. This has been a great session, really insightful, so shout out to you. Now I wanted to sort of close the session with a couple questions that are earlier on our talk folks have asked. It's mostly related to folks who are new to product management. So folks are interested to learn from you, as you are, a product leader. What are some of the important factors that you are considering when you consider people who are joining PM, maybe pivoting from a different field? If they're new to this market, what are some of the skills that you look for, and how can they best position them? Especially, I think, coming from like a pivoter's angle, how do they emphasize those skills if they haven't done product before?
Yeah. One way to think about that is for most of product management, there's a bit of a rubric. You mentioned Marty Kagan. Read everything from Marty Kagan. You'll get a sense for what are the things that are required of a product manager. And if you're pivoting, you'll probably find that whatever role you're in, there's some of those skills that are transferable to product management, right? Because I don't think the product management, unlike potentially engineering, right, which is one often like very specific skill set they need to get hands down, product management pulls from a lot of disciplines. So it might be helpful for you to think about all the things that you've done, look at the PM rubric and competencies and see like, where is there overlap? Because I guarantee you that there is some, and maybe lean into what those things are, understand it, and also understand what the gaps are so you can fill them in for yourself. I think that's one. I think more broadly, this idea of being really open-minded, right, about what starting might look like. For some folks who pivot, it means that you're starting all over again, right? You might be making the leap to become an associate PM and you're leaving a senior position. That's, again, soul searching, but you need to be open to that. I think there's also just the idea of maybe not being too strict on exactly the industry or exactly the kind of company when you get started. Because as I said at the beginning, any product role at any company, you're going to learn a lot about product management. So being open to that, I think, is really important.
I love both angle. Understanding the rubric, so know where your gaps are, where your strengths are, how to position yourself, and then be open-minded. I think that's so critical, especially in today's environment. You might take a couple of steps to get to your dream product role, and be open to do that. So searching. So love that. All right, we're coming up on time. So Nikita, we usually ask all of our guests a lightning round of questions at the end of every talk. Are you open for the challenge?
Let's game. Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Okay, drum roll. First question. What is your favorite product currently and why?
I really like the Peloton app. I think it's well designed. I think the content is great. And at this particular moment in my life, it's really flexible and it's easy to get a workout without having to think about it. So I'm really
That's awesome. I love Peloton as well. I don't like their stock as much, but
I don't exercise in full makeup, but that's another conversation.
Right. Second, who would you say is your product role model or someone who's been most influential in your product career?
I don't have one. I think I don't have one person. I think I've worked with really great people and I've learned many different things from all of them. So yeah, not just one person. I could, if I said whom, I would list a long list of people. But I think the takeaway is you can learn great things from the people right next to you.
I love that. One last piece of advice. What would be a parting advice or resource that you like to share with our audience?
Resources, I'd say, I think the first round review is really great for people in product or just in tech, and in part because it focuses on all the disciplines, and that's really great. In terms of parting advice, I think, I'm not one for New Year's resolutions, but I am one for New Year's reflection and intention. And this just seems like a really great time to do that. I would also say it was not planned, but Dr. King's birthday is coming up this week in the US. And every year in my family, we read his letter from a Birmingham jail. And I would ask that everyone have a look at that and read it in full. There's a lot of inspiration there that I think we can all draw from in all parts of our lives.
Love that. I think this is great timing. I'm really glad we reschedule it because now it's after your, holiday break, reflection and intention setting, and it also coincide with the MLK weekend. So encourage everybody to read that as well. So thank you so much, Nikita, for spending time with us. I think the community really loves your insight. And again, for those who are job searching, sign up for our special series to help you get the job, kicking off with Marty Kagan. So really exciting conversation. But thank you so much again, Nikita. It's been a really, really great honor to host the session with you. I personally learn a lot. It's a forcing function for me to reflect on what I want as well. So thank you so much for that
Thanks,
dose.
Leslie. And thank you everyone for joining from all over the world. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Bye.